Hey guys, what's up? Week 428. Have some reviews for you, one movie in the update, but let's hop right into this. The first one up is the 4K update of The Blood of Fu Manchu. This is put out by Blue Underground. This is the fourth of the series of 5 films, all starring Christopher Lee as the titular kind of villain here, Fu Manchu. And Fu Manchu did not start with these movies. He goes back to, I believe, what was it, the 20s, where there's a bunch of books written about the character, and there's a producer, Harry Alan Towers, who produced a bunch of stuff, often worked with Jess Franco 9 times, according to Stephen Thrower in the special features, on stuff like Count Dracula and Venus and Furs, which those are some of my favorites Jess Franco movies. So he worked with Harry Alan Towers a bunch, so he was going to do these. I think these are probably the last 2 he actually did for him. And he had purchased the book rights to these, got Christopher Lee to do these films, and by the 4th one, Jess Franco was directed them. So the first 3 have never had Blu-ray releases stateside. They did have Blu-ray releases overseas, and I've thought about importing them from imprint for years, but I never actually have. I think I have a DVD of the one that Warner Archive put out. But okay, so The Blood of Fu Manchu follows Fu Manchu with another kind of devilishly evil plan. The same guy he's out to get all the time is trying to thwart him, but in the very beginning of the film he's kind of paralyzed by a poisonous kiss. So this time around, Fu Manchu's plan is to have these beautiful women that are kind of brainwashed or assassins of his to kind of go around and poison all the world leaders, and eventually he's going to blow this up and make it bigger and whatnot. So it's very much kind of in those evil superhero veins. These movies are a lot like the precursor to kind of superhero movies, and with the James Bond stuff going on, it's kind of in that line as well. So when I first saw these movies, I saw these when the Blu-rays were released to these, and I wasn't a huge fan of them. I had seen much more Jess Franco since then, but even then, it wasn't. I am a fan of Jess Franco, but I just don't think I really grasped the time frame. And I always complain about 60s kind of spy movies, hokey movies, and stuff like that in that kind of vein. It's never been my favorite subgenre, as you guys know. But this time around, after watching a lot of the kind of krimis or the Dr. Rabuza movies, and even some weird kind of spoofy Shaw Brothers spy films, I could kind of gain a little appreciation for this one a little bit more. It does have a couple familiar faces in here. Maria Ralm's in here, who I believe was actually married to Harry Alan Towers. She pops up in a bunch of his movies. She's got a smaller role. And, of course, like I said, Christopher Lee is in here. There's a one of the kind of goons in here. Because often I almost called him Mr. Fu Manchu, but Fu Manchu will kind of have these other bad guys carry out his deeds and then double cross him. I don't know why anyone trusts him in these movies. He's always immediately double crosses them and whatnot. So you're like, come on, man, stop trusting Fu Manchu. He's no good. But what happens is he has this kind of Mexican bandito kind of character in, I can't think of his name. He's in a bunch of stuff. He's in Coming At Ya. He's in the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. Just a classic kind of Spanish character actor who pops up in a lot of the Italian spaghetti westerns. And he plays this kind of fat, angry, bandit kind of character. It's really bizarre because he has a small town kind of taken over, and Fu Manchu's kind of assassins come in. So we have this weird, kind of ninja-style characters versus these banditos in the jungle. It is just a weird smorgasbord of stuff going on. It does seem a little loose and kind of all over the place at times. But this one I did enjoy to a certain extent. I don't like it nearly as much as, I wouldn't say nearly. I like the other one, the 5th one, surprisingly, which I rated really low the first time I saw it, a little bit better than this, and that's probably just due to the lighting and the styles and stuff like that. It's decent. Christopher Lee is kind of in the back in this one. He's not a huge part of this movie. It looks fantastic. You would tell me that this was directed in 1968 with this 4K master. You'd be like, nonsense. But, Franco was always really good at his locations. His camera work was pretty solid. His sets are fun in here, and the locations are really kind of the centerpiece. This one's solid. It does have some sleaziness in it, some nudity in here. There's a lot of fondling, and I remember there being some quirky kind of silly music when the banditos are basically raping and pillaging, and you're like, yeah, it's a little out of place, but it is what it is. It's the 60s kind of I wouldn't even call it an exploitation movie. It's more like an adventure kind of spy film. Like I said, again, I do want to say it looks fantastic on 4K. It's kind of a bummer. I can't think of the actor. He pops up in the last two of these, but he's also in Tales from the Crypt. I recognized him right away as the poor guy in the Monkey's Paw story. But he's kind of the heroic, I guess the foil to Fu Manchu, and he's kind of takes a back seat to this one. We have a new audio commentary with film historians Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson. Very good commentary. They seem to enjoy the film, and I think Troy Howarth's favorite actor is Christopher Lee. He wrote a book on Jess Franco. Did he write a book on Jess Franco? I know he wrote a book on Klaus Kinski, so he had a lot of Franco movies in there. I can't remember all the books he's written. I know I have the Fulci and Argento one. I know he's written a Lindsay one, a Carpenter one. I have that one as well. So, he's a big Franco and Christopher Lee fan, so there's that. And Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson are very informative, talk a lot about the actors, the releases of this movie, how it was butchered, all that kind of stuff like that. And then we have some carryover stuff here from the Blu-rays and DVDs. The Rise of Fu Manchu, interview with director Jess Franco, producer Harry Allen Towers, Christopher Lee, Sai Shin, and Shirley Eaton, many of which have passed away since that interview. New Sanguine-stained celluloid interview with Stephen Thrower, author of Murderous Passions, Delirious Cinema of Jess Franco. That's good stuff. I think it's about 27 minutes on one of them. It's pretty good information in there. He does talk a little bit about the same stuff they talk about in the commentary. But yeah, if anybody knows Jess Franco, it's most certainly Stephen Thrower. Trailers, newly expanded poster and still gallery, new Riff Raff track edition, The Blood of Fu Manchu. This is riffed by Mike Nelson, Bill Cobert, and Kevin Murphy. That's a 77-minute version there. Which is pretty cool that they added that, because the movie was kind of... These movies were both famous, or infamous, I should say, for being on the... I don't know if it was Riff Tracks originally, but it was definitely the Mystery Science Theater. I think a lot of these movies popped up. And I've always had really kind of a... I don't want to dog anybody, because I'm sure that the people in Mystery Science Theater love the movies to a certain extent, but it's the fan base. They see them, and they rate these movies poorly, and I never was a big fan of... They actually talk about that in the commentary, which was nice to see. And Mike Nelson actually pops up on one of the special features of another disc here of a movie that was riffed on Mystery Science Theater, which is funny. But I've never been a huge fan of it. It's just kind of so weird to riff on, and I know that's not the intention of basically the people on there, but what it turned into kind of reminds me. It's just something I never liked, because at a very young age I was always kind of the defender of movies that everyone hated, and what I didn't need was professional comedians destroying them and everybody just saying, well, if it's so good, how come it's this and this and this, you know what I mean? It gives uncreative types I'm not saying that people on Mystery Science Theater are uncreative. I'm saying the uncreative types, it gives them ammo that they can use without coming up with their own, assessments of the movies, if that makes any sense. But looks great. Let me get into the specs here for the people. It does have Dolby Vision. I know people wanted to hear that. And I don't think it has like I want to get the sound here. Just a 1.1 mix here. So, yeah, great stuff. Looks good. Sounds pretty good, but it's not like a super remastered audio or anything like that. A lot of these movies do not have the elements for that kind of stuff. But yeah, The Blood of Fu Manchu. Okay, the next one here is The Castle of Fu Manchu, 4K release from Blue Underground, the fifth and final Fu Manchu movie. And I've heard the story numerous times in special features and when people talk about Harry Ann Towers and Jess Franco. And I guess the reason they had their falling out, they mentioned it in the features, which is absolutely really funny, is... after Harry Ann Towers saw the Jess Franco final product, he said, I never thought I could be done, but you finally killed Fu Manchu. Basically saying, you killed the series with this movie. It's that bad. So this one actually reuses footage from Brides of Fu Manchu and kind of does like a different thing to make it look like new footage. I did not know that because I've not actually seen Brides. I'm going to pick up the other ones when I get a chance, I know. And it uses footage from a Roy Ward Baker Titanic movie, which I never knew as well. And it's kind of odd. I was like, oh man, the boat stuff looks great. It looks a little bit bigger budget than expected, and the opening and stuff like that. I was like, why? Rewatching this, I was like, man, why was I so hard on this? This one looks bigger and better, and like a lot of that stuff is just reused stuff, which is funny. But it worked for me. This has Rosalba Neri in here, who is in a bunch of, Euro horror films like Lady Frankenstein. Great role in that one. And she's in Gialli and stuff like that. Good actress, always very memorable, gorgeous in this, and very weird outfits. Very much in kind of like the 60s bizarre kind of outfits that I think people would base like their whole personality on, some of her oddball outfits in this movie. And it also has one of the guys from who What Have You Done to Solange, they mentioned that in the commentary, and I didn't notice him at first. And then when they said that, I was like, oh wow, that really is him. And he has a memorable role in What Have You Done to Solange. And I don't want to spoil his role, but once you see What Have You Done to Solange, and you'll know exactly who he stands out as kind of a crazy kind of role in that. But Fu Manchu is at it again along with his daughter. And this time they want to freeze the world seas. And they decide that they're going to do it in like Turkey or someplace. They end up in Turkey where they kind of butt heads with this guy named Omar Pasha, who they use kind of in this idea here to like infiltrate this kind of castle. That's why it's the castle, because Fu Manchu takes over a castle, and they use this kind of local criminal kind of warlord to do it. But of course, Fu Manchu's going to double cross him, and we got Rosalba Neri in there trying to survive and whatnot. But that's just Fu Manchu's kind of thing. He uses people and then he turns his back on them almost immediately. Now, he needs the help of a professor, Professor Heracles. I'm sure Christopher Lee loves saying that line, Professor Heracles. He loves that kind of classic stuff in there. But this professor he needs because he knows the final formula to freeze the water into ice and whatnot right away. So this guy is dying of a heart ailment. So he brings in his doctor, Gunther Stoll, from What Have You Done to Solange, and his kind of, wife or girlfriend or something, a nurse, I think it's a nurse practitioner or whatever, to kind of help him give a heart transplant to this guy, and he has them hostage. It's up to our heroes from the first film, also in full kind of swing here. They're actually moving around and doing something this time around to kind of rescue and stop everything like that. And in this one, it has a lot of lighting that's like classic Gothic kind of style, but actually almost really kind of big, and I never really registered how pretty it looked. It's kind of like they went nuts with the gels. There's like purples and greens in the dungeons and things like that. So this one I think is a little bit more entertaining in the sense that it just looks a little bit better and it's more fun and more Gothic, I guess, look. But I also have to mention, Jess Franco has a bigger role in this one. He often played small characters in his films, and this one he's pretty funny. He's kind of like a general, and there's this guy, this informant that's talking to him, and every time he keeps like trying to offer him information, and Franco wants nothing to do with it. He's got his little fez and everything like that. But he kind of goes down every time. He calls him general, he's like lieutenant, and then he's like, see you later, sergeant, because he's obviously mad about that. That's just a nice little verbal kind of thing in there. Franco's funny in it. Overall, I think there's a little bit more fun dialogue in here too. We fished the same river. Yeah, the one fish river. We were looking for the same fish. That's a nice little gag in there. Funny joke. I mean, not a gag, but it's just a nice little joke in there. Some dialogue. I found this one a little bit better. And of course, it ends with Fu Manchu saying, "I will be back," or "I shall." You haven't heard the last for me, but they did. And in the commentary, again, is Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson. And they basically mentioned like the later rendition that came out later of the Fiendish Plots of Fu Manchu with Peter Sellers from 1980, which I never did watch for 80. But from everything I've heard, it's abysmal and not really a horror movie, more of a comedy, and just really came off poorly. There's also a special feature, of course, with Castle of Carnage interviews Stephen Thrower, Murderous Passions, Delirious Cinema of Jess Franco, and I think he's the one who mentions, I think they mentioned in the commentary as well, that Franco actually used the character of Fu Manchu later in another movie. He couldn't make Fu Manchu, but he could use reference to him or something along those lines, and he kind of has a character that is very Fu Manchu-like or has the same name or something like that. So they all seem to wish that Jess Franco would have got the band back together with Harry Alan Towers and Christopher Lee and patched things up and made one last Fu Manchu movie in the 1980s. Then we have The Fall of Fu Manchu. That's similar to the last, when the classic kind of like poured over with interviews with Jess Franco, Harry Alan Towers, Christopher Lee, and Chai Chin. Newly expanded poster and still gallery, new riff track edition as well, 75 minutes. So that's a Blu-ray only, the riff track stuff. So we have Mike Nelson coming back and making fun of the movie and whatnot. I actually did not get a chance to watch the riff track versions, unfortunately. Like I said, not exactly my bag. Although I know that he is a lover of film, it's one of those things where it's like the fan base has destroyed that aspect for me. And I know I'm probably being harder on it than I should, but they look great and they sound great. So if you want to upgrade, Blue Underground's been upgrading a lot of their stuff. I'm hoping for an Inferno. I mean, they did what did they do? Death Dream yet? I believe they did Death Dream and Dead and Buried, which were and Daughters of Darkness and Zombie and Maniac. A lot of them told me to a lot of great 4Ks that they put out, and honestly, when they do the remasters on the audio to the Dolby Atmos, it's like unmatched. I think that they probably do some of the best work when it comes to audio and visual stuff out of all the release companies. But 4Ks look great for Blue Underground. If you're a fan of these, then I would update them because they've not had 4Ks anywhere else. This is the only place they have them. So if you're a massive fan of Jess Franco or the Fu Manchu movies, check them out. Okay, this next one here is from Eureka, and this is the magnificent Chang Cheh. And these are two more films from Chang Cheh, one of Shaw Brothers, if not Shaw Brothers' most prolific director. We're going to start with The Magnificent Trio here from 1966, if I'm not mistaken. This has Jimmy Wang Yu in it and Lo Lei, kind of two big stars from then. And of course, everybody knows Jimmy Wang Yu eventually would part ways with Shaw Brothers, and they would kind of use like David Chang in his kind of place and other actors and things like that. But this one here is a period piece, of course, the more serious of the two films. And what happens is there's this kind of evil magistrate who's exploiting the people for taxes and taking their money and just doing awful things to them. So they kidnap his daughter, these farmers, and they want them kind of dead. They hire these assassins. They get a bunch of guys released from prison that are just vicious kind of criminals to go in there, and they want them to attack them. Jimmy Wang Yu kind of wanders on the whole thing and figures out what's happening, and he starts to side with the farmers, wants to help them out. Gotta be a mediator between this whole thing like that. And he ends up making kind of a deal here. Well, one of his friends is also kind of released from prison because he was hungry and agrees to help. But when he figures out that he's helping a bunch of horrible people, he joins Jimmy Wang Yu ASAP. Lo Wei is kind of a guy who hangs around the magistrate. And you think he's kind of a bad guy, but he is one of these guys that only kills and only fights when he feels it's justified or deservingly so. He's kind of a, I don't know how to say this, but he seems a little shady, but push come to shove, he actually ends up being a genuine good guy, and I love that. So Lo Lei is actually my favorite character in this one. He's a badass character. He's kind of like the Green Ranger of the movie, if that reference makes sense to anybody like that. So what happens is Jimmy Wang Yu agrees to take the punishment for these men. And he gets whipped, and of course the magistrate, every chance he gets, goes back on his words, and the daughter that was originally kidnapped starts to have sympathy for them, and a lot of these people are all going to try to help Jimmy Wang Yu escape from it. Some other people are going to be killed. It becomes complicated, tragic. We're going to have a giant, big old battle at the very end with all the baddies and some of the prisoners that he's hired out and stuff like that. This one's really entertaining. Magnificent Trio is great. Lo Lei's great. Jimmy Wang Yu's good in this too. Great fight at the end. Really entertaining, and overall good stuff. There is some special features on here, of course. We have one of them is optional dubbed, but that one's not on here. Where are we at here? We do have a commentary. There's two of them. I want to make sure. The Trio, we have a commentary by Frank Jin and Michael Worth. That's pretty good. Great stuff. Again, like I said, they're always a good combo because Frank Jin knows the background on when the movie's released, how much it made, all that kind of stuff like that. A lot of the actors, Michael Worth can jump in and talk about the martial arts stuff in here and how they work and everything like that. So it's a good duo. I always enjoy their commentaries. I always can, learn a little bit about it. But Magnificent Trio, I really like this one. I thought this was one of better Chang Cheh. I always call him Chang Chi, but it's Chang Cheh releases. I always make that mistake. But I thought this was one of his better films, and I've seen probably like 25 of his movies. Usually pretty good. Sometimes they're not great, but I really like the Magnificent Trio. Okay, the next one here is the Magnificent Wanderers. This one's much later. Now, Trio is 66, and I believe Wanderers is like 77. And this is a rare comedy from Chang Cheh, which is not really kind of his thing. Usually he has like the precursor to the heroic bloodshed movies, like the John Woo movies, where people are just getting killed at the very end. There's that great one with Tai Lung, where they're like the military and the ending's fantastic, like a Sam Peckinpah movie. And so it was like the Magnificent Wanderers. I was like, okay, we have David Chang, we have Aleksandr Fu Shang. I love Fu Shang. I've grown to really like this guy. Every time he pops up, of course, he had the tragic death when he was just in his like 30s or something along those lines in a car accident. But he's great in this. These guys are kind of like these three kind of, he has like three kind of goofy guys, and they kind of they're basically street hustlers, which is no new role for Aleksandr Fu Shang. He did a couple of those in the 1982 movies like Fake Ghost Snatchers. He kind of has that gimmick in there, and he also, what was the other one? Legendary Weapons of China. I think he plays that kind of similar character too, like a street hustler kind of character. But so he has him and a couple of his buddies end up helping out David Chang, who they don't, unbeknownst to them, he's rich, super rich, and of course this villainous character, this lord, wants his money, and he's hired these two, I think, Mongolian guys to get it, and they're kind of like these buffoons that always get in trouble and everything like that because they always fail. So David Chang ends up splitting his money, having it be held by these other guys who have money to kind of like throw off the bad guys. But of course these guys are going to backstab him and be pieces of crap, so he has to have complicated ways to get his money. He's actually so rich that he uses his gold balls to hit the villains with like a slingshot, and everybody stops and picks them up and like picks up their teeth and grabs the gold balls and all that kind of stuff like that. So that's kind of a fun gimmick here. But the problem with the Magnificent Wanderers is it just never seems to end. Like, they constantly go and they get repetitive and they run into these two guys again and silliness ensues. And there's a point where the movie should end, but it goes on for another 10-15 minutes. It's not a bad film at all, and I enjoy the character portrayals of like Fu Shang, and David Chang's decent. And there's some good moments here. The main villain is this guy who's wearing like this big fake suit body of armor that makes himself look ginormous, but he's actually like a little coward inside, and he always has a speech impediment, which ensues this gag where he can never say, if you fail again, I'll cut off your head. He always stutters and stutters and stutters, and the other guys are like, we know. This time there's a commentary by Army Venema and Mike Leader. Again, that one's decent. They do make some jokes about it. The guy's so rich that he uses the gold balls to kind of shoot it and everything like that. This one's not nearly as good as the Magnificent Trio. Magnificent Wanderers is fun enough. There is a nice little feature on here. I think there's another thing. Chang Cheh, new video essay by Gary Beditson, editor-in-chief of Asian Cinema Journal. So that's decent as well and interesting. Learn some things about Chang Cheh. And a lot of them are kind of like, he's not really known for comedy, so it doesn't really come across as his best work, of course, The Magnificent Wanderers, but both look pretty solid. Magnificent Wanderers you can watch in, is it Cantonese and English? I bet it is probably Cantonese on this one. Let me double check on that. I think the original is original mono audio tracks, so I'm not sure if it is in Mandarin or Chang. I bet the Magnificent Trio is in Mandarin possibly, and then Wanderers would be Cantonese, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know when they constantly shifted in Hong Kong to Cantonese predominantly for their movies. But nice release of two movies. One I really like, one I think is okay. Okay, the next one here is from Deaf Crocodile Films, and this is Sampo. And this is directed by Aleksandr Ptushko. I think I said his name right there. Ptushko, who directed the movie I covered last week, Ilya Muromets, which I thought was fantastic. Big, epic, like Russian fantasy, medieval kind of style thing. But this one is more of a Finnish folktale here. And what we have is this evil kind of witch that has like her wizards, and she's kind of isolated on this island. So she decides to kidnap the daughter of this kind of blacksmith, and this blacksmith is magical. He's kind of like a superhero. He can create anything he wants to, and she wants the Sampo. And the way that Stephen Bissett explained the Sampo in the commentary is it's basically a cornucopia that never stops giving. Whatever you want, the Sampo can provide. So basically what happens is she's also to be married to kind of a young hero. So the young hero and the blacksmith end up going to this isolated place to confront the witch and get their loved one back. And everywhere she walks, there's like kind of beautiful flowers and things like that. Everybody's kind of magical and powerful in here as well. Our witch has captured winds, so like fog and winds, and she uses those to her advantage and things like that. And she has like a magical cloak. So there's all sorts of things like that going on. And so they get there, and at first they must plow the vicious field of all the snakes. And she eventually convinces the blacksmith to do it, to make this Sampo for them. And they release her. They go back, and the hero feels like he wants to get the Sampo back for the people and everything like that. And they keep saying with colored lids or golden lids or something like that. So the Sampo will spit out grain and riches and stuff like that. So he goes back, and he is kind of tricked by the witch. And that's kind of, he's kind of poisoned and things like that. And, of course, he's going to have to defeat the witch with all these kind of things like that. It's an interesting movie. It's very much like a Finnish folktale kind of deal. It's gorgeous looking. The sets are great. The special effects are really fun and innovative. The cast is good. There's some visual gags that I like. Stephen Bissett points out one that's pretty funny. That, how our kind of maiden here walks and flowers pop up. So like the villains see the flowers and it's so disgusting to them, they start ripping them out, which is pretty funny. The witch is a good villain. The kind of goons that she has that she like ties to a rock and punishes are really cool looking, and they have like the kind of scraggly, crazy hair and everything like that. I thought this was really good. Also relatively short, 90 minutes. pretty quick, fast-paced movie here. The commentary is great by Stephen Bissett. He did the commentary in Ilya Muromets as well, and he talks about the kind of Russian-American film exchange, but he also talks about how they used to try to Americanize these movies for the Western audience, and it's really funny, the fake bios they made up and all that kind of stuff like that. So this looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. I really enjoyed this one. Not quite as much as Ilya Muromets, but that is a bigger film, more action. This is more kind of a folktale, but it has a fair amount of action. Pretty fast-paced, beautiful-looking movie as well. We also, besides the commentary track, comics artist Stephen R. Bissett. We also have reprint of part 2 of film scholar Alan Upchurn's pioneering essay on Aleksandr Ptushko's from Video Watchdog, and then we have a new hour-long interview with Mike Nelson, head writer and host of Mystery Science Theater and writer-performer of Riff Track, covering the career and highly popular MSTK 3000 editions of Ptushko's The Day of the Earth Froze, Sampo and the Sword and the Dragon, Ilya Muromets, hosted by noted comic artist and novelist Bob Fingerman, Minimum Wage, and Dennis Bartok of Death Crocodile. This is interesting. This is good because they talk to Mike Nelson about, what films, how it got picked, how they picked their films and stuff like that, how he actually thought of the movie. They talk about the joke that this might be the most expensive movie that Mystery Science Theater's ever gotten. So all that kind of stuff like that. And I really enjoy Mike Nelson talking on there. But like I said, I've never been a Mystery Science Theater guy. I've only seen a couple episodes. They never did too much for me because I've always grown up with movies and loved movies that people mostly found bad. And I had to defend them until years later I found my brethren online and a couple people in person and stuff that loved the same kind of stuff that I did. But they're talking about like getting these edited versions and how Corman changed the name The Day the Earth Froze because all those big movies that were coming out, like The Day the Earth Stood Still and all sorts of things like that. The Val Guest movie too. So that's all interesting information, good stuff. I would recommend Sampo. Looks fantastic, looks gorgeous. I'm just impressed with the innovative nature of the special effects and the scale on a lot of these USSR, Finland co-productions and stuff like that. These magical kind of movies like that. Good stuff. Okay, this next one here is from Radiance Films, and this is Rosa la Rose, fille publique. I'm terrible with French, but this is a 1986 movie by Paul, I want to say his name, Paul Valachi. I can never say this guy's name. I'll not be able to say his name. But I know him from one film, The Strangler from 1970, which is an exceptional, dark film. Which I watched for 1970 about a man who is goes around killing women that he believes are going to kill themselves. So it's just bleak, very bleak film. This movie not quite as bleak as that. This follows kind of a prostitute on her 20th birthday, and Jean Sorel, classic French actor, great actor and stuff. I think he's in Perversion Story, the Fulci movie. He's also in Eye of the Hurricane or Fox with the Velvet Tail, same title. So he's just a classic French actor. Shock Treatment is another one, a French one. That he's just great in this, and he plays kind of her head pimp. And we are introduced to her world from all these characters like protectors, other prostitutes, and a young boy who's obsessed with her, and all these kind of her regular clients. The music is fantastic. It's beautiful. The cinematography is beautiful. The acting is fantastic from Jean Sorel to the lead here. I loved her performance, and there's these moments where she'll have a scene and she seems happy, and then the camera will stay on her and you'll see her eyes, and the acting really is within the eyes. I really truly do believe that. So a lot of those kind of subtle performances are within the eyes, and her acting in the eyes is fantastic, and the director and the script and stuff leave time for these people to kind of express themselves through their eyes. And there's moments where she throws something on the ground, she seems happy, and then there's feel a slight hesitation or something like that, maybe a moment of realization or something, that I was oh wow, this is kind of making this a little bit more nuanced for me, a little bit better in that aspect. It's shot beautifully, like I said, and the location is used fantastically, from the streets to the bars, and there's just no real complaints when it comes to the quality of the filmmaking. So the story is a little odd, at times it seems whimsy, but at times it seems grounded. I would never call it a fantasy movie, but it does seem a little bit more lighthearted at first, and then gets kind of dark in this tragedy. It's this idea that, a 20-year-old would definitely romanticize true love or these kind of aspects like that. And that idea, young love, eventually what happens is this young man and her catch each other's eyes, and they kind of fall madly in love with each other, and she wants to leave the prostitution life, throwing kind of a wrench in John Surreal's kind of life, and he's also madly in love with her as well, and he's infatuated with old film and always making her watch old film and bringing it up. So like that idea that she's like into that stuff or knows of that stuff kind of, I think, like kind of inspires her to act the way she does and have these kind of romantic, viewpoints of love, and also the naivety of being so young. So it really paints a lovely character in Rosa, or an interesting character in Rosa, and it's hard not to kind of fall in love with her. She's gorgeous, and she's like fun-loving, but also full of life and vibrant and things like that. Never seems to worry, you know what I mean? So her character's great, her portrayal is great, and the way it kind of unfolds is also really interesting. And a bit tragic. I thought this was a great film. I thought it was well acted, well directed, like I said a million times. And the score is highly memorable, very catchy, and it immediately sucks you in. From the first 5 minutes, you hear the score and everything like that. There's some great characters on the side too, like this young boy who's madly obsessed with her, who wants to lose his virginity to her, but he's underage. And then there's these two older prostitutes that kind of have to deal with being older. And there's like this whole moment where they have this birthday where it looks like the Last Supper and everything. It's framed like that with the people sitting there, and there's this big dance routine that almost plays like a musical, and it's just like kind of full of life. So I thought that Rosa, La Rose, was just fantastic. It was a great movie, a great drama. And the funny thing is, somebody asked me this week, and I was talking about this, I was like, man, French actors just aren't bad. Like, if it's a real movie, like a well-made, like not like super independent movie, I was like, French actors just never turn in a bad performance. I've never seen like professional French actors in a French film turn in a shitty performance. Now, that's not so true about, American actors in a big American movie. I've seen some really bad performances. Swing for the Fences, trash. But as far as maybe I've just not seen that many French movies, I feel like I've seen a fair share, to be honest, but I've never seen a French mainstream movie or a French movie that's made on a professional level with shitty acting. I've seen some really low-budget French movies with some really bad acting, but hey, that's that. But French actors, for the most part, do not turn in a bad job. I would highly recommend this one. As far as the special features, we have audio. Okay, interview with the critic David Jenkins. That's about that's not too long. He talks a little bit about the movie, talks about the kind of look into this life and everything like that. Archival interview with director Paul Vecchiali. Somebody help me with that one. And that's interesting. It's very short. I like these ones. There was stuff like this on the box set that they put out. The I can't think of the director's name, but they had this French box set with these crime films on there, and they had these interviews where, like, with Gerard Depardieu on television and stuff, and that's very much like this. And the director seems highly intelligent. Looks like Vincent Price with better hair, if that makes any sense, but he's just an intelligent, articulate, smart guy. Archival interview with actresses Maureen Bassler and John Surreal. Again, they come across very intelligent. I like the interviews on these French releases. It seems like the press handled themselves well, and it seems like the actors and the filmmakers also handled themselves well and spoke with intelligence. Newly improved English subtitle translation, reversible sleeve featuring artwork based on original promotional material, limited edition booklet featuring new essay by Marina Ashanti, and newly translated archival writing. So this is region free. Great movie. I'd recommend this one for sure. Okay, the next one here is from Honored Films, and this is Visceral, Between the Ropes of Madness. And I've not seen this movie since the original DVD was put out by Honored Films. This was a 2012 movie, so it's been quite a long time, right in that heyday of really extreme independent stuff. But this one, like I said, is made in Chile. So South America doesn't really fuck around. If anybody's ever got any movies from that time frame, like Hidden in the Woods or Trauma, the South American movies that came from that time frame, from like maybe like 2000 to 2015, 20, were just pretty hardcore, and it's almost like they didn't get the memo. Like, I know a lot of American like horror movies or horror porn or anything that's extreme or nasty it seems like very by the numbers at times, and it's very rare that you'll find a transgressive filmmaker who's like making something dangerous, or it feels dangerous, or it feels like their heart and soul's pulled into it, although there is some. It's a rarity to find. When a movie from South America or some other countries makes it over here, you can tell that these filmmakers are putting 110% into this. So This film is told in 3 different timelines. It's about a boxer who suffers a head injury, and he obviously has some, horrible home life before this and all that kind of things like that. And he just snaps, and we're seeing him from different timelines. Of course, first he's clean shaven, and then he has hair, and then he has this gnarly beard, and it's edited into kind of an experimental, kind of weird, kind of crazy way, with really well set up shots and things. But we see his exploits. We see what happened to him, not necessarily in the correct order, right? Not the typical order. We see that he has a head injury, and we see his kind of his kind of hallucinations that he has of this kind of character. And Judas, this woman who's partially in bondage, reminds me a lot of something from like the Her Name Was Torment movies that my friend Dustin Mills made. That kind of idea there, right? That's like Cenobite kind of Jacob's Ladder haunting kind of creature or entity that's speaking to you. In a horrifying way. That's this kind of this thing that propels him to murder and kill. And we see it these brutal murders, and you don't realize how extreme a lot of it is when you're so used to a lot of it, you become dull to a lot of the extremity stuff. But almost within one of his first murders, there's a necrophilia scene, and there's of course somebody losing. There's genital mutilation. There is eye socket kind of trauma. I'll leave it at that. I know people have seen a Serbian film; they know where I'm getting at, or something like that. And there's just a lot of brutal stuff in here. The one thing I took away from this after listening to the commentary, which is a nice addition here. He's speaking in Spanish, or it might be Portuguese. I'm not sure Chile's predominant language, to be honest. But he's talking in the commentary about making this film when he was right out of like film school with his friends and things like that. And he's like early 20s. He also stars in the film, and he talks a lot about that. And he says, there's a lot of good shots in here. I like that it has a homemade quality about it, but it's also professionally well done. And I was like, that is a very good way to explain this movie. It doesn't look like anyone else's movie. It definitely seems homemade, but it definitely has a good quality about it. Now, the other movie I would kind of explain looks a little bit like this, are kind of the Phil Stevens movies, like Flowers and Lung 2 and stuff like that, where it has this almost like it's slightly drained to color. And I think in the beginning of the movie, there was more color to it. And over time, it feels like it gets more bleak looking, but I don't know that that's just in my head or not. And through the commentary, I was like, okay, you know what? There is some really well-placed shots in here. He talks about the idea of this Freudian cycle and stuff like that, and the kind of the mother being so abusive to him, and that seems pretty depressing. And mirrors and things like that, the only reflection of yourself. And I was like, yes, that's very common with breaking the mirrors, but it pays off really well. There's this one point where he uses a mirror as a weapon, and he's holding it like this, and he's made his homemade knife, and he's holding it like this, ready to kill the person. And from our point of view, we can see the victim in the mirror screaming, and you're like, oh wow, that's really horrifying. In the knife blade, I was like, that's a very good shot, well collected shot. And cutting back to these moments in time, at different times in his life, when he's ready to do the thing, like to kill the last person he's planning on killing before he confronts his own personal demon or his own kind of catalyst within his body. So this is actually better than I remembered. I liked it. I remember liking it, but I don't remember taking that much away from it, looking at it intellectually that much. And hearing the commentary kind of helps. He talks back about how he would like to make more movies. He made a couple, and that he really likes this movie. And when he points out certain shots, I was like, you know what, there's a lot of well thought out shots, and the idea of someone having a head injury and becoming a violent killer is something that is done on surface level, but maybe not as in depth. And it is kind of a crazy, wild movie with a lot of blood, and there's this bondage aspect to it where a lot of the victims are like tied up like in the Katsu erotic films, like rope fetish movie or something along those lines. And it's like, okay, that's a little odd, almost like some fetish stuff kind of going in there. Now when I was watching this, I was like, man, that seems a lot like Schramm, the Jörg Buckarett movie. And when the commentary confirmed it after I rewatched was the commentary, I was like, oh wow, that is great. It was a shout out to Schramm, which I've always been a fan of. And he also points out that the credit opening, that kind of shaking credits, Tetsuya the Iron Man. I was like, oh wow, this guy's one of us. This guy is a hardcore horror fan that's making references to extreme films, but also maybe not the most mainstream horror films for the generic audience here. And I don't want to sound like a dickhead here, but a lot of the people that end up making indie movies or their own movies and things like that are not very versed in a lot of other indie cinema or experimental cinema or not the mainstream stuff. They know their Halloween and their Scream, so therefore you get a bad ripoff of Halloween or Scream, and that's fine. Well, we've seen that a million times. Now, have we seen movies that use bits of Tetsuo the Iron Man? Yes, we have. Yes, we have. But also like Shram and from Chile and stuff. So it's a little bit of a different mixture of flavors and things like that. Obviously, you got to have some August Underground in there. I'm not sure if the director is familiar with that film. It would be hard to say he's not if he's making references to Shram and Tetsuo and things of that nature and Cannibal Holocaust. But you know what? I thought this was pretty good. And it held up. It held up. A lot of the extreme movies that I used to watch, they don't hold up. They're just, they'll... Extreme for extreme's sake is not something I'm interested in. I don't mind any extreme content in a movie, but if that's all the movie has to offer, then I'm going to check out because I don't give a shit anymore. But if the movie has a bunch of stuff to offer and it has extreme content, the extreme content will not ruin a movie for me, most certainly. It could enhance it under certain times, for sure. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have commentary with writer, director, actor Felipe Eluti, Cineteca Nacion's Massacre, and XOCO, Coco, I'm not sure, 2013. It's very brief, just kind of introduction to the movie and talks about it and stuff like that. Behind the scenes gallery, teaser trailer, roughly, very short, 76 minutes, and 8 of that is credits. So we got a 68-minute movie, which is perfect for kind of an experimental, violent, extreme movie. You don't want to wear out your welcome and become too tedious like a lot of directors do with this kind of stuff. And I don't want to name any names, but sometimes you'll pop in, 4.5 hour torture movie about Unit 731 or something like that. I'm just kidding, no. But that movie is a lot to take, Philosophy of a Knife, and it's 4.5 hours long. But it's not necessarily bad. I'm just saying that 4.5 hours of that stuff is grueling. Well, 68 minutes is, it's appealing, a little bit more appealing than that. So yeah, check it out. Visceral. I want to make sure I get that little part right there, Between the Ropes of Madness. So check it out. It looks good too on Blu-ray. I didn't know how well they could update it, but it is a well shot film, and it does have a certain look about it too. And if you've ever wanted to see, the Chilean slums in certain aspects in movies, because he talks about filming in Santiago, like the ghetto where nobody is ever, and there's a scene where a character is beaten to death. A homeless person. It reminded me very much of like the August Underground, Penance, but just goes a little further. They kind of just harass the guy in that. But this one is kind of very much in that vein. Okay, I have a couple new ones here. 2025 movie is going to be pretty brief with this. It's Fear Street Prom Queen. That's right, the fourth in the Fear Street series. Now, I don't remember reading many of the Fear Street books growing up. They were around. I remember there was a couple that I did read. I read Goosebumps, and there was another series that I read that it was another Fright something that was there, and I bought a bunch of those. So, I probably read a couple, Fear Street ones or saw them at the very least. The trilogy, the original trilogy, I was mixed on. I really liked, the first one. After the first 15 minutes I was into it, I had to adjust, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of them to a varying extent. So this one, I'd heard some pretty negative things about it, to be honest, but I didn't really care. It took place in the 80s, and it opens up very much like the first Fear Street does, where it's a huge exposition dump, tons of music, and they're introducing all the characters. And the problem here is, within the first 10 minutes, they're telling you who all these characters are. Like, these are the people running for prom queen, and this character's this, and this character's that, and this character's that. And most of the characters are only that because you told us. Otherwise, I would have no idea that this is the best friend, or this is the... Because they really don't get much screen time to kind of reflect who they are. So it's like, you're telling me a lot and you're not showing me anything, which is always a general rule in film when they tell you show, not tell. So, in reality, right in the beginning, I was like, it's not a great start. But overall, I don't want to rag on the movie too bad. It's perfectly fine. It's accessible. It's a great accessible horror movie for, a general audience, somebody just getting into horror. It's rated R, but it's mostly just violence. It's not like anything sexually explicit. Violence is okay. Show your kids. Yeah, But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not sexually explicit. It's pretty, much about on a violence. And I think that most kids will probably be fine. Like, teens for sure will be fine with this one. But, so what happens is we got 6 people running for prom queen, or is it we got 4 kind of villainous girls who are like the Heathers group of the school. We got kind of the nice girl who has a dark background. Her mother was accused of murdering her father, all that kind of stuff. And then we have like the kind of like badass, leader of the pack kind of girl who's hanging out with like a biker and everything like that. So of course they all start to get picked off. There's a bunch of red herrings. Who could be the possible killer? Is it Lily Taylor, kind of the assistant principal? Who's the real principal? Great actress. She's okay in this, has fun in it. I mean, she's in The Addiction and some other movies like that. So decent performance from her. They have all these different red herrings and things like that. The killer's look is kind of crummy, very generic. It's very much inspired by something like, like, I wouldn't say Scream, but that kind of Kevin Williamson kind of inspired look, you know what I mean, if that makes any sense to anybody like that. But the kills are solid. They're gory, they're violent. The only problem with the movie is they really, like, the mother comes in at one point, like the main character's mother, who's been accused of all this stuff, and like she's never been in the entire movie, but she's like halfway through and she comes in and she has like just dramatic moments like, but I don't really know who the fuck you are, like that kind of stuff. Like this is a lot of like unearned emotional beats that I don't give a fuck about. So like that kind of stuff, and then also like if they could have found a way to cut out like 15 minutes of the fat of this movie and then just put in like 15 minutes of character development in the beginning that shows you these characters instead of tells you who these characters are. But besides that, it's fine. It's a completely fine movie. It's entertaining enough. The kills are fine. There's a lot of needle drops from the 80s, which sometimes can be hit and miss. So something like Skull Island, like they kept dropping like 60s Vietnam songs, and I was like, I get it. I've seen all these Vietnam movies. This is becoming tedious and becomes a parody of itself, and I just don't like it. This one, the first one I felt was like that too, where there's like 15 needle drops in 15 minutes, and I was like, this is too fucking much. This one started like that, but it's pretty decent. I think they should have had a little bit more deeper cuts. I feel like the 80s needle drops in here are just a little on the nose, if that makes any sense. Like everybody who's ever like listened to pop radio at that time or afterwards would know them. I feel like maybe get a couple little bit different ones in that not everybody knows, might have had a little bit more spice and flavor to it. But overall, Fear Street Prom Queen is fair. It's fine. And people are like rating it 1.5. It's like, no, it's not a 1.5 star movie or anything like that out of 5. You may be insulting to you and upsetting to you or something like that, or not that great, but it's completely fine. It's completely average. Show your kids Prom Queen, Fear Street Prom Queen or something like that, and they'll have a good time. I would give it a slight recommend. I don't love it, but I like it. Fine enough. So it's not too bad, and the acting's fine for the most part. Nobody's abysmal. Everybody's solid enough. Just the characters are a little. About half of them are paper thin. Okay, this next one here is Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse. And this is, I think, a Mexican horror film here by the director of The Similars, which I had not seen. This actually has an actor in it. The only actor I knew was Noel Hernandez from We Are the Flesh, which is a really crazy movie from 2016, if nobody's ever seen that movie. Wild fucking movie. But, so this one, let's just call it Children of the Apocalypse here, follows 3 brothers, one of which who is without a leg, he's the older brother, and 2 younger brothers. One of his, Oliver, is very young. And they're trying to survive during the apocalypse. They have all these kind of, ways to do things, to get food, to eat dogs and things like that, and feed it to something that is in their fucking basement. Now, it's called the Monster, and nobody wants to show them what it is, but we kind of get the idea of what it is. Some sort of, like, COVID-like virus has spread around, and I guess there was vaccines and things like that, and not everything really worked out to everybody's plan. I'll talk a little bit about it without spoiling it all. So, it has a look about it like it's drained of complete color, where you're like, I don't really like this look, but it's going for that desolate kind of thing, and after a while I adjusted to it. It's not my favorite look. I think even Misery should have color in it. I know that sounds weird, but I think that without it, there is no kind of back and forth, you can't have that's why it's like if I'm going to use this as an example, it's weird. The I Spit on Your Grave 78 is vibrant with color and it looks real, so it has a sense of realism about it, while the remake looks like the generic idea, what a Westerner would think is Eastern European, is drained of color, and you're like, I just know something bad's going to happen. It doesn't really work for me in that aspect, visual. So this one, like being drained of color, I know it makes sense because it's post-apocalyptic, desolate, everything is gone, everything's sucked out of life, so it makes sense to me, but I think that I kind of need both. I need the color to have it to kind of contradict the horrors that are happening or anything like that. I think when it looks natural, and color correction and stuff you can do that with still, and make it look natural and vibrant and different and things like that. Different color for different movie, but still, when it comes to this, I lose my sense of realism. But hey, this is not a real world, I guess. I think it's well done. I think it's well acted. I think the bond between brothers is interesting. I think the psychology is good. I think it's got good special effects. I think it's got nice twists and turns. I think it's a little too long for its own good, but I don't have any real complaints about it. It's definitely a contender for top 10 this year so far, so I'd recommend checking it out. I enjoyed it, and it's good stuff. Spoiler here. So this is, in a way, a zombie film. and I love zombie films. And it does feel something a little bit like maybe a 28 Days Later or Fido and those kind of aspects here. You know, it's been done before, right, where we have the zombies and we're feeding them to a certain extent. Or Die Alone is another movie that came out a couple years ago, which is in that kind of vein as well. But so we have the parents that are ones in the basement that they've been feeding, and they're hiding it from the younger brother. But when the younger brother realizes what's going on, he decides, hey, let's treat them better. I think we can help our parents get better at this. So they start to treat them more human, and the parents start to kind of adapt and get a little bit better, which is great. But this kind of pushes it forward to where the brothers want to take it next. Do they want to try to revive their parents? Because if they don't feed them human flesh, maybe they'll get a little bit more dull and things like that. And they kind of are out there looking for a cure because there was supposedly a new cure and everything like that that was out there. So that's kind of the film. They run into some religious, zealots, some religious kind of fanatics, and that's where Noel Hernandez comes in. He's got this big kind of speech about the trumpets and all that kind of shit like that. If you hear the trumpets, and that's really cool. But yeah, this one's solid. I would recommend it. Good special effects, mostly practical from my understanding, and the parents crawling around with the chains and stuff is really cool, and the ending's pretty cool too, but just a little too long, but good stuff. Check it out. Parvulos, Children of the Apocalypse. Okay, the Patreon pick is Creature from 2011, and I remember hearing about this one. People were like, it's like an old school creature horror film, and I was like, yeah. So when I started this, I was like, oh, this is a lot like Hatchet. Kind of reminds me of Hatchet, which I dig. Has Sid Haig in there, and David Jensen is in here too. So like in the beginning, I was like, oh, we got a great exploitation setup. You know, we got these kind of like Marine guys going to the small town with their girlfriends and things like that. We kind of set up the 6 characters. They're all a little bit weird, kind of different kind of characters, of course. We have a couple that are Marines, and then we have one guy who's kind of an oddball kind of character. He's into like this weird, like, cryptid stuff like that. So when they stop at the classic, like little roadside stop with Sid Haig and Jensen and a couple other kind of, your classic Hicks characters, one's got like the hearing aid, they hear about the kind of crocodile man that was supposedly here or something like that. And of course they make fun of it, which is, kind of a rehash of the House of a Thousand Corpses scene with Sid Haig, right? And they're like, yeah, and then they basically send them out to the house, which is definitely in the role because House of Thousand Corpses. And we hear like the flashback of the crocodile man with the albino alligator. It's alligator, not crocodile. Sorry, guys. But albino alligator, which is really cool too. And like I love the setup, and the special effects are great. And the alligator looks really cool. And Sid Haig's fun. And Jensen's great. Jensen is most known for me. He's in The Mist. He's the guy who was William Sadler that kind of poke at the kid to kind of go outside and stuff like that. And he ends up kind of joining the Thomas Jane later on. He's good in this too. He's actually he's got like missing fingers. He's got a nice little story too. So him and Sid Haig are fun in it. So basically they point them out to go here, and you know what's going to happen, right? They're going to run into this kind of creature. The creature looks pretty decent, comes out of the swamp, pretty scary, looks like Killer Croc or something along those lines. Of course, they're going to have the aspect of the Hicksploitation kind of being villainous as well. And I don't want to spoil any twist in that. The characters are decent. Some of them are actually a little bit, they stand out because they're not just your generic kind of characters. I can't think of the one actress's name, but she's kind of like the love interest of, our kind of weird kind of guy. And she's also like brothers with one of the Marines. She's really good in here, kind of quirky in character. Doesn't look like everybody else, so she stands out. The creature is, of course, going to start picking them off. And we have this kind of twist, too, where we have to like do sacrifices to the creature. The movie is pretty decent, pretty standard until the very end, and then we have this big kind of fight scene, which is awful. The fight scene sucks, and it goes on forever. It's almost like they ran out of money or ran out of time to finish it, and it just doesn't work for me. The whole last act, not even last act, the last 5-10 minutes fight scene doesn't work for me. They do set up the sinkhole thing, but I just thought it was crummy. I wish it would have been a little bit better. It would have brought this one up a little bit more. And, it had some good things going for it. It doesn't completely ruin the movie or anything, but it was a little bit of a letdown. That's Creature 2011. Overall, okay. Worth watching if you love your kind of classic Hicksploitation monster movies. I'd like to see a lot more stuff like this. I've always loved my Hicksploitation, like Gator Bait, which is coming out on Blu-ray. I'm so excited. And all your monster movies like The Creature of Black Swamp and stuff like that. I'm into that stuff. Especially alligator men. Bring more alligator men in here. But yeah, anyways, Creature, it's just okay. Let's get these questions, comments, concerns. Ken Coakley. I watched Black Cab sometime last year and didn't know that Nick Frost was the killer cabbie. Just thought he was a guy that looked like him. A few days ago, while looking for something to watch on Shudder, I found Getaway, and when I looked up the cast in Getaway, I found out that Nick Frost was in Black Cab. But I watched Getaway. It took a while to get off the ground for me. I'm not a fan of families in a town full of weirdos. It started to get funny. The actor who played the owner of the B&B looked kind of like Moe, the bartender on The Simpsons. Agreed. I laughed out loud when the wife ordered Frost oral pleasure. There was no way any man in the situation would say no. I also liked the use of Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. Agreed. The song is 43 years old and it's being used all over the place. I used to not like the song because the original singer left and I was still loyal to him. Now I like it. Another song of theirs, Flash of the Blade, was used in Phenomenon. Also a cool song. I talked back to the screen when they got off the ferry and the townspeople got belligerent with the family. I wanted to be there so I could say, we won't leave until you apologize to us for the band Europe. I couldn't escape the final countdown back then and I can't escape it now. I also watched Opus, which made me laugh constantly. I was trying to figure out who John Malkovich was trying to imitate. He did look like someone who might have been in the one-hit wonder group Right Said Fred. I thought Malkovich was going to sing, I assume, If You Think I'm Sexy. I'm too sexy for this compound, too sexy for this compound, too sexy to be a gash hound. Now, I had to sing that somewhat. When they all sat while Malkovich was walking around singing while doing lewd dances, it reminded me of the scene in Performance when Mick Jagger portrayed the monster's boss in an acid trip. Mick Jagger sang Memo from Turner. Juliette Lewis was unrecognizable in the film. Indeed. Nick Moole from Belgium. Glad your dental surgery went okay. No mishaps or mad dentist, right? Mrparka, having used the damn AI-generated voice app just wouldn't be the same. I'm so sick of the fucking voice app thing. Like, I watch a clip and it's like, here's what happened to this guy. And it's like the same voice ever, and then you like listen to it, and you're like, that's not correct, that fact's incorrect, and everybody's listening to this shit, making content with AI. Go fuck yourself. Not you, but I'm just saying, like, if I had to, but I would actually do the script myself. They're not even writing their own scripts. It just sucks. It's going to kill us. Though he famously disliked the end product, I can't help but adore Peter Cushing and Corruption. Such a mad film for the times, quite bloody and varying degrees of nudity depending on which version you saw. And as you said, it evokes Eyes Without a Face or Circus of Horrors. Films where murder is for art or beauty's sake both thrill me and creep me out. I've treated myself to Night Watch Collection by Arrow, should arrive any day now, for my upcoming 42nd birthday. Happy birthday, and after your positive review. I'm glad I did. Nicolo Coaster Waldau is such a gifted performer, it doesn't surprise me he ate it big on Game of Thrones. Also, I was happy to see him return to the genre in Andy Muschietti's Mama, playing two parts no less. Yeah, he's great. Denmark has produced some superb thespians despite being a relatively small country. Think Mads Mikkelsen, who's never given a shitty performance in his life, if you ask me. Questions. Which European country has the best actors according to you? France really doesn't suck. But I like some Italian countries too. I mean, I'm really loyal to Italy, so I'm going to have to go to Italy, but the answer is probably France. Do you like the whole Scandinavian horror genre, or has it overstayed its welcome like Cheh horror? No, I like all that stuff. I mean, the problem with a lot of the stuff is when you're living in it and you constantly see it all oversaturated sometimes. And not Scandinavian stuff, I don't think's been oversaturated, but like you're like, oh man, I don't want to see another Cheh horror. I don't want to see another zombie movie. And then when you go back and watch them again, like I'm going through this, like I don't want to see another trauma horror, but in 10 years I go back and watch them. They're probably going to be pretty fucking good, so I'm glad they're there. But sometimes when you're in it, you just want something new. Were you ever afraid of the dentist? Because I sure used to be. I'm not sure if I was afraid of the dentist. I was afraid of the doctor getting shots, but I've gotten over that. Maybe I didn't want to go to the dentist at times. Till next time, God willing, and may you... Yeah, I was scared of my orthodontist when he did my braces. That was terrifying. Still next time, God willing, and may you spared any further surgeries or medical procedures in the future, sir. Take care. Thank you. Ben M. 1414. I don't know how this came in my feed, but damn, he's handsome. Feel better soon, dude. Thank you. Action Papa. Great reviews, love your channel. It's great to hear about Ilya Muromets. A lot of us 80s kids in Russia watch those, and now thanks to Deaf Crocodile for putting out the Ptushko box set, which is back in print on their site, so stoked to have gotten one. Hope to hear your review of more of their titles in the future. I learned about Fille from your channel and now have a dozen titles from them. Fille is a great movie. Fille. Great movie. Jack London, great show as always. You often mention using AI subtitles. Could you explain how you do this? And have you ever tried AI translation earphones while watching a foreign film? I've not tried the AI translation earphones, but AI subtitles, I go to Subtitle Edit And they have kind of they have different like engines. They're like Whisper or something like that, and you can use that, and they'll download the engines and the languages and things like that, and you figure out which ones you want, what depth. There's different all sorts of like things like that. I can't really explain it in depth here, but it's pretty easy once you start using it, and there's more people that can get in more depth with it and things like that if you look on YouTube. But start with subtitle edit. Ed Rooney, about movies set in morgues. The Autopsy of Jane Doe is one hell of an eerie thriller. The other one you probably were thinking about is Orel Paulo's The Body. That's, in my opinion, a masterclass in modern suspense. The narrative is cleverly woven, the screenplay intricate but tightly controlled, and Paulo handles it all with stylistic confidence, drawing cinematic tensions from every silence, corner, and glance. It's visually striking and complemented with great performances. Night Watch Demons Are Forever has nothing of that. It's a sequel that falls flat on nearly every level, while the original remains a tense and well-acted thriller. This fallout feels like a pale imitation, lacking the spark that made the first film memorable. The biggest letdown is the painfully obvious twist, and this climactic confrontation drags on with zero suspense. To top it off, the film delivers a heavy-handed ideological message that feels forced out of place. As you can probably tell, I did not like the sequel one bit, but to quote the great James Dalton, opinions vary. Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, to be honest. I thought it was well made and well acted, but for the most part, I could never really find a reason for it except to get to band together and have fun. But I'm glad the director's still making movies, and he still can make a good movie, visually and technically and all that kind of stuff. I can update it. I just not sure why it's there. You know what I mean? Like, and then he says, I replied, he thought the movie I was talking about was that, but it's another kind of like South American movie, like the Light. I can't think of it. I sent him the message and I forgot it again. I was like, I don't want to do this, but I forget. But it's like that 2016 movie where the Night Shifter, which is a really cool movie. And he says, oh, thanks. The trailer looks intriguing. It seems to be a lot more graphic than The Body. More on the level of Autopsy of Jane Doe with a little bit of inspiration from the TV series True Calling, 2003-2005. I need to check out The Body. Thanks for the info. Way Up Dude gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Saint 3188. I hope you get better soon. My thoughts are with you. Sorry, I've been busy in my life as well. I just saw Superman, and that was incredible. I'm interested in Superman. I've never been a big Superman guy at all, but I love James Gunn. So maybe I don't know. Maybe they'll cancel out each other and stuff like that. I might see the Fantastic Four only for the sole fact I'm done. I haven't watched a Marvel movie in a long time. The Fantastic Four was my favorite ones. Like at a certain time in my life, I was a big Thing guy. Thing's my favorite superhero. So I was like, do I see the Fantastic Four because I want to see the Thing? And he hasn't been in a good movie yet. Although I'd like Michael Chiklis as a Thing, it wasn't a good movie, I wouldn't say. But yeah, as far as the update here, we have one, and it's important. Ghoulies Go to College from the Vestron collection. This fucker was $35 shipped. That's insultingly high for just a Blu-ray. But I love the Ghoulies, as you guys have know, and I love Ghoulies 3. 2 and 3 I love. This one I just had to have. I couldn't live without Ghoulies Go to College. The Ghoulies have more education than half of the American population, probably. Yeah, prank week. Yeah, there's a commentary on here, which is nice, and interviews. But yeah, this is. I don't like that the Vestron series has become this Lionsgate Limited. You know, I didn't grab May yet. I might get May, but I probably won't get the Steve Martin movie. So it's like I know I was a completist on the line, and it's not just about them being a completist on the line. It's mostly stuff that I was interested in, so I grabbed it. And when they were $10, it was hard to say no. But for $35, I think I will skip on the Steve Martin comedy, even if it's a great movie. It's just not something that I need to have in my collection as I get older. You know, it's just not something I would purchase necessarily, if that makes any sense. But yeah, let's get out of here, guys. We're done. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.